Guys, I mean, just sitting back from the perspective of a fan listening to you, hearing about, you got to trust your body with this person that you're in the ring with. But then you got these politics behind the scenes. So you don't know if you can really trust the person that you've got to have trust with. Dan, we were talking a little bit before Jacques got on about some of the like evil ribs that goes on backstage. I'm curious to hear some of the stories of what you saw, Jacques.
Jacques, what I was tell Eric about is like, one of the ribs that I heard these guys always talk about was coming back to the locker room and find the fact that somebody basically shit in your duffel bag. I'm thinking, how is that funny? To me, it's like going, I would be pissed if I came back to the locker room and found my bag. So I never left any of my stuff behind.
Jesus,
I just understand.
You guys are bringing me back in a horrible memory lane.
I apologize about that.
No, it's okay. I you all know about the incident with me and the British Bulldogs, I guess. I assume
Dan doesn't. I do.
Dan, you don't know that, eh?
But no, not really. Again,
I'm surprised it went around the world. But anyway, I'm not going to go into the whole story. Just to tell you that the British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid, was a bad ribber, and he was a bully, and he used his loud voice and his toughness and his to pick on mostly the guys that are being easy to intimidate. And so long story short is I became a victim of his, and so I didn't stick for it. I didn't take it. And I just I actually told some people that I was going to bring it back to Vince. I'm not going to take on coming back to the wrestling dressing room after a hard match and finding one half of my pants cut off, the leg cut off. When it's about -20 outside, then you got to go and I wasn't going to stand for it. So I was going to report it to Vince on Monday. And by the time it got back to his head, that he was informed that I was going to stooge on him and I was going to say something, he beat me up in the dressing room so bad he left me on the floor in a pile of blood, and because I was going to stick up for myself, and I had a choice. I had a choice to do like all the others that were bullied, that just put my tail between my legs and go back home and live with that for the rest of my life, or the other choice I took, I don't know where I got it from, Dan. That's why I have so much respect for you, because I'm not a fighter, but I had to stick up for myself. And for a whole week, I was preparing in my revenge, and I couldn't eat. I couldn't. Every time I'd eat, I'd throw up. I couldn't sleep. I lost like 15 pounds because, like I said, for me, fighting is a very hard thing, especially with a guy that's on a pack of steroids every day and like on pills and uppers and downers. He was like a crazy guy. And very temperamental, and so I was very much afraid to do what I had to do. But for my father was always my hero, and the Rougeau family have always had a great reputation. I didn't want to be the one who tarnished it or made it the end of the Rougeaus because of me. So it's like I got my brother Raymond helped me a lot, by just encouraging me and stuff like that. And so I got the courage up. I don't know how. I still don't know how today. And a week later, I waited to get my revenge, and the way he did it too, I was when he beat me up, I was sitting playing cards with Mr. Perfect in the dressing room, and Kurt Hennig was part of that too. He was part of that deal where he sat at the other end of the room with the back to the dressing room to the wall where. We were playing cards, and he set me up so my back was to the dressing room. And when Dynamite came in with his gang, there were about 4 or 5 of them. They came behind me, and he just slapped me on the side of the head. I fell off the chair. I was playing cards, and I fell off the chair. And he didn't have to do that. He would have beat me up anyway. But anyway, so he came, but he did it from behind, and he came and hit me, and then I fell off the chair. And me not being a fighter, I just got up like, whoa, what's going on with that? And then he kept punching me and kicking me in the face when I went down. And he said, "You're gonna tell Stu? He's gonna tell Vince McMahon, you're gonna stooge on me. You're gonna." And I heard you wanted to stooge on me, and the only thing I could hear is that, and then finally I couldn't hear nothing. So a week later, I waited my time, and it's so amazing. What I'm going to tell you, this is amazing, but I finally called my father up. the night before I did my comeback, and because my dad was there in Miami when I got beat up. My father's a snowbird, so we were wrestling in Miami. We're on the road, but we're wrestling. So my father had picked me up at the airport. We went to eat at his house, brought us to the Miami Convention Center, and then he's bringing me back, and we're in Chicago the next day. We're on the road 25 days a month. So it's like when I get the chance to see my dad, he'd pick me up and bring me. So when I got beat up at the arena, I got back in the car. I was all swollen really bad. The Elephant Man was me in my face. And so I got back in the car, and I never spoke to my dad. Not a word. And all the way back to the room, he was like, he couldn't believe it. And he was trying to talk to me. I wouldn't even talk to my dad. I was like in a space that I can't explain.
Right.
And
you're in that zone. You're basically withdrawing in yourself because you're actually thinking about what you're about to do.
I was a trauma. No, but I wasn't there yet. I was more like in a trauma. I was like in the lost. I was lost, and I was embarrassed. I was there's so many things that I could say. And the next morning, my dad brought me to the airport in Fort Lauderdale, and on the way, because I was going to Chicago, he tried to talk to me. I never spoke a word to him in the car, and I left. So that was the last time my father saw me. So a week later, I haven't spoke to my father all week, and then I decided that on that Monday, a week later, I'm going to do my comeback. So I called my father on the Sunday night. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, because I was still swollen up my face. I said, Dad, I'm going to do my comeback tomorrow. That was the first time I spoke to my dad in a week. And my dad, my dad, Dan, you're going to like this. My dad told me, he says, listen, he says, before you go to the show, go to the bank. And he says, and I was saying, go to the bank. Like, what the hell is my father talking about? And then he says, you make sure. He says, go to the counter and ask for a roll of quarters. And he says, when you get that roll of quarters, you put it in your hand. And he says, when you hit him, he says, you hit to kill him. You hear me? He says, you hit to kill him. And I said, and I was so afraid. I was so freaking afraid already before he told me that. And I got so nervous because I said, what if I miss? Always thinking that the whole week long, I kept throwing up thinking, what if I miss? What if I, and finally that's what I did. The next day I did what I had to do. And 4 teeth came out when I hit him, 2 in the front here, 2 in the back. And I'd never seen blood come out of a human being so much when it was coming. And that was the end of the Bulldogs' career. 2 weeks later, they gave their notice, they quit, and it changed their lives. It changed mine. I saved the Rougeau reputation all over. I became a hero to many, hated by many. But for me, life changed. I became, after that, a new character, Intercontinental Champion, 3 times Tag Team Champions. I beat Hulk Hogan in Canada. I'm the only Canadian to beat Hulk Hogan in Canada.
Wow.
Hulk gave me that gift. And so much things changed because I stood up for myself. But if you know, Dan, how much hard it was that week to do that when you're not a fighter. You're a fighter. That's why I respect you so much. Well, I'm not a fighter.
Jack, talking about that, going back to the bullying thing, what was that like for you? I've heard you talk a little bit about it, but what was that like having to face your father with that damage on your face after the incident with Dynamite?
I was caught in a trauma. When I left the funniest thing is when I got beat up after it all happened. Only after the damage was done that the agent came in. There's always an agent every night, and the agent came in, and I was on the floor. And then the first thing he did is he got me up, and then he said, Jacques, he says, don't worry. He says, you don't have to wrestle tonight. That's the first thing he told me. And I looked at him and I said, oh, I'm wrestling tonight. I'm wrestling tonight. So I went to wrestle anyway. I went about a half hour later. I was all fucked up. Excuse my language, and I wiped my face up, and I was so lost. But I just wanted to keep going. There was something in my head that said, just keep going. It's going to pass. Keep going. And you get in that trauma, you get in that mindset where you're lost and you don't know where you're at. You just want to get out of it by putting one foot in front of the other. So I went to wrestle. But my father never knew I got beat up in the dressing room. So he's in the stands. He's waiting to see his 2 sons go out and perform. And then he sees me come out like that, and he could barely recognize me. And then after and my brother Raymond, and in those days, he had an injury to his knee. So he was on crutches. So what we do in those days when we're in tag team and a guy was hurt, well, the other guy would carry the load. We'd work tag team, but my brother would come with crutches by the ring. So my brother was on crutches. So when my brother came out with crutches to the ring, and then I followed him all swollen up, it wasn't a good night for my dad, I'll tell you, because he understands watching all this. And then so when I came back to the dressing room, there never was question of me showering or nothing. Just picked up my bags and I wanted to get out of there. And when I got to the car, Raymond was sitting in the front with my dad, and they were talking. And a couple of times my father talked to me. I was sitting in the back, and I never even acknowledged him. I was gone. I didn't know. So I never talked to him until I went home and sleep in Hollandale at his house. Till the next morning I got up, he brought me there. I never talked to him once, not a word. So it was like so he let me, I guess they understood that it was better to leave me alone, and to deal with it. But there's no way to explain where I was at. But I did not want to become a McFly like Back to the Future. Yeah. I just didn't want, that's what I didn't want to be looked like. Because my dad, I had so much pride from my dad. So much, I don't know how to say that. My dad was my hero, and I didn't want him to look down at his son that was a weak link or
Jacques, really quick before you get out of here, I wanted to ask you something as we close the show. If there is one of these kids that might be watching that has been going through this bullying, that has been going through those hard times, what's a message you could leave them with?
The message is very simple. I bring it about 20,000 different ways in every conference, but the bottom line is the minute you talk to someone about it, half of the battle is won. Because once it's the teacher, the parents, the principal, the minute you get it out there, they become a target from everybody. Now, so once it's the cat's out of the bag, the hardest part for the people who are having bullying is talking about it.
Right.
And it's keeping them inside and really getting so dark upon themselves that sometimes it comes to suicides because they can't deal with it. They're afraid, and they're saying to themselves, "Oh, if I tell that certain person about this guy who's doing that to me, oh, what's he going to do to me next? If I stooge on him, or if I stool." And that's the hardest bridge to cross. Once you've managed to cross that bridge, one day you'll look behind you and say, "Wow, I'm so glad I talked about it," because it's always 100% of every time that I've dealt with it, with personal issues and all that. Once you've talked about it, it settles itself.